you know what you're doing?
No, she said you were in charge.
No, she specifically said that you would know everything about enzymes.
Oh, great. She goes and clones herself to make stuff easier, and you've gone and messed it all up.
How hard can it be?
Cut. Where's the real Mrs. Law?
Right, you two, go and find something to do that actually helps me for a change. So today's lesson is the core practical for enzymes. Now this practical is all about the reaction between amylase and starch. Now amylase is the enzyme in this practical, so therefore it'll have an active site for the substrate that is starch. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to change the conditions that the amylase is in, because we're going to look at the effect of pH on the enzyme that is amylase. So the pHs I've got here today are pH 2, pH 7 and pH 11. So what we're going to do is we're going to put amylase in with the pH buffer, and we're going to leave it for a little while so that the pH affects the amylase itself. What we're then going to do is we're then going to add the starch to that mixture, and we're going to then see the rate of reaction. Now the way that we're going to time that rate of reaction today is by using a stop clock. And we're going to look at the effect that the amylase is having on the starch, and we're going to then see if the pH does affect the way that the amylase does its job. For us to do this practical, we need a range of equipment. Now obviously I've said that we need a stopwatch. You will also have a dimple tray. You will also have syringes, and you will have the starch, amylase, and then the pH buffers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to collect 2 millilitres or 2 centimetres cubed of amylase. So we're going to put that into the test tube. So obviously what we now want to do is change the environment that that amylase is in. So we're going to add our pH buffer. Now, so all I need from that is to collect 1 millilitre of pH 7 buffer, and I'm now going to leave that for a second for the pH then to affect the enzyme. So what I'm now going to do is, while that's left there, I'm going to add into my dimple tray iodine. Now the reason that we use iodine is because iodine changes colour in the presence of starch. Now as you can see at the moment, the iodine is this orangey colour, but when in the presence of starch it will change to a blue-black colour. Now hopefully what we will see then as this experiment goes on is we will see starch present at the very beginning, because the amylase obviously wouldn't have had time to react with it, and over time hopefully we'll see that colour change. Now at this point then, our buffer solution has been with our amylase for a little bit of time, so what we're now going to do is we're now going to collect a pipette, because we're going to have to collect some of this mixture and place it into the dimple tray. Now the moment I add the starch, I'm going to start my stop clock. So what I'm going to do is use the stop clock to time 20 seconds. And every 20 seconds, I'm going to add a drop of the solution into my dimple tray. So the first one, 2 millilitres of starch, in with the amylase, and I'm going to collect a drop into there, and I'm going to start my stopwatch. Now at this point, I'm going to now time it for 20 seconds. And what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to add my next drop. So I've finished the experiment now, and what I want to do is give you a closer look at what we've just done. Well, this is a better view. Let's look at the first three. So what you can see is that the first dimple has got starch present, and quite a lot of starch present, because obviously nothing's happened yet. The starch hasn't had time to be broken down because the amylase has just been added to it. If we move on to the next one, what you can see is that the amylase has started to break down some of the starch, but most of the starch is still present. And if we keep continuing to move, more and more starch has been broken down. So by the time we've got to dimple 3, you can see that more starch has been broken down because there's less black iodine present. So as we move on, you'll see that the last few have now really lost their black colour. And that is because nearly all the starch has been broken down by the amylase. Now at the very final dimple, what you can see here is that the iodine has now completely returned to its normal colour, and that is because there is no starch present whatsoever. Now that tells me that the reaction has finished because all the starch has been broken down. So what we do now is we look for the time that that's taken, and from that we can work out the rate of reaction. Now at this point, I can't remain this size forever, so Mrs. Law number 2, can you now sort out my size, please? Can you do that?